Story 1. Tap, tap, tap.
It started on a chilly March evening in Coleridge, a small, quiet town nestled in the hills. My room, perched on the second floor of our old Victorian house, was my sanctuary. It was where I spent hours studying, chatting with friends, and scrolling through Facebook. That night, as I lay in bed, a faint tapping sound drew my attention. Tap, tap, tap. I glanced at the window, but the thick curtains obscured my view. Shrugging it off, I assumed it was the wind or perhaps a bird fluttering against the glass. After all, it was an old house. Noises like this weren't unusual. For the next few nights, the tapping continued, always late at night, just as I was drifting off. It wasn't consistent, but it was enough to unsettle me. When I finally mentioned it to my dad over breakfast, he dismissed it casually. "Probably just a branch scraping against the window," he said between bites of toast. "We'll check it out this weekend." That explanation should have comforted me, but it didn't. Something about the sound didn't feel random. It was deliberate, almost rhythmic. One evening, as I was scrolling through Facebook, a notification popped up. It was a message from an old friend, Robin. We hadn't spoken in years, so I was surprised to see her name. "Hey, sorry if this is weird," she wrote, "but I came across something you need to see." Attached was a link to a Facebook profile. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. Clicking the link, my heart stopped. The page was called EB Memories. The profile picture was a candid photo of me from what looked like 2 years ago, sitting on a park bench. I didn't even remember it being taken. The timeline was filled with posts all of me. Pictures of me at school, walking to the corner store, sitting in the living room with our dog. Some of them were taken from so far away that I almost didn't recognize myself. Others were disturbingly close, like one of me smiling at a cafe with my friend Amy. The captions were worse. "She's even prettier in person. I could watch her forever. One day, she understand how much she means to me." I scrolled in disbelief, my stomach churning. Then I saw the most recent post, and it sent a chill down my spine. It was a photo of my bedroom window, taken from the backyard. The caption read, "She's just a few feet away. Soon, we'll finally meet." I froze, my eyes darting to the window across the room. The curtains were drawn, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was out there, watching. Panicking, I called my dad and showed him the profile. He looked as alarmed as I felt. That evening, we installed motion sensor lights and a security camera by the back door. He promised me we'd do more the next day, but I barely slept, jumping at every creak and groan of the house. The next night, the tapping came again. Tap, tap, tap. I bolted upright, my breath caught in my throat. Gathering every ounce of courage, I tiptoed to the window and peeked through the curtain. The yard was bathed in the cold, artificial glow of the motion sensor lights, but no one was there. We reported the Facebook profile to the platform and the police, but they said there wasn't much they could do unless the person physically showed up. The account was taken down 2 days later, but the damage was done. I moved to a different town within a month, leaving Coleridge and that house behind, but the experience changed me. Even now, in a new home miles away, I still find myself checking the locks twice, keeping the curtains drawn tight at night, and bracing myself for the possibility of hearing that dreaded sound. Tap, tap, tap.
Story 2. The Catfish Trap. It all began on a cold October evening. I was killing time on my phone, scrolling through TikTok, when a new notification popped up. Someone had followed me. Her profile name was Lily, and she was stunning jet black hair that framed her face like ink on porcelain, piercing green eyes, and a magnetic smile that seemed to leap off the screen. Her profile was brimming with content, scenic vacation shots, candid moments with friends, and a subtle, effortless confidence. What caught me off guard was the message she sent me almost immediately. "Hey, I hope this isn't weird, but you seem really cool. Would love to meet up sometime." I stared at the screen, surprised. It wasn't every day that someone like her reached out to someone like me. My thumb hovered over the keyboard before I finally replied. Thanks, that's super flattering. You seem pretty amazing yourself. The conversation flowed easily, like we'd known each other for years. She asked about my favorite places to eat, my favorite books, even how I usually spent my weekends. Before I knew it, she suggested meeting up. How about Caf Merida? Tomorrow at 6, she offered. Caf Merida was a trendy spot on the edge of town, known for its cozy vibe and great coffee. Excited, I agreed, already imagining how the meeting would go. The next day, I left work early to get ready. I was 25, but I felt like a nervous teenager preparing for their first date. I chose my outfit carefully, trying to strike the perfect balance between casual and put together. I arrived at Caf Merida at 5:50, parked across the street, and walked in. The aroma of fresh coffee filled the air, mingling with the soft hum of conversation. I found a table near the window and waited. By 6:10, she still hadn't shown up. A twinge of disappointment crept in, but then my phone buzzed. Hey, sorry, my car broke down. Can you come pick me up? She texted, followed by a pin dropped at a nearby street. The location wasn't far, just a 5-minute drive down Willow Creek Road, a quiet stretch that led toward the outskirts. Something about the situation didn't sit right, but I shook off the doubt. Things happen, I told myself. I reached the spot a few minutes later. A silver Honda Civic was pulled over on the shoulder. Its hood popped open. The street was eerily silent, lined with dense trees on either side. I parked behind the car and stepped out. Lily, I called, my voice echoing slightly in the stillness. No answer. The car's tinted windows revealed nothing, and the open hood didn't seem to indicate any obvious issues. Another text came through. Almost there. Just give me a sec, she wrote. Something felt off. Why would she text me if she was already here? I took a step back, glancing uneasily at the car. That's when I saw it, a hand emerging from the slightly cracked driver's side window. It wasn't Lily's hand. It was large, weathered, and unmistakably male. My heart slammed against my ribs. I shouted, "Who's there?" But the only response was the soft creak of the car door opening. I didn't wait to find out who or what was inside. I sprinted back to my car, fumbling with the keys as panic clouded my vision. As soon as I got in and locked the doors, the Honda's engine roared to life. Its headlights blazed, flooding my car with light. The chase began. I tore down the road, my tires screeching as I rounded corner after corner. The Honda stayed on my tail, its high beams glaring in my rearview mirror. I pushed my car to its limits, weaving through the streets until I finally reached the safety of a busy intersection. The other car peeled off into the darkness. I didn't stop driving until I reached my apartment, where I locked every door and window. My hands were still shaking when I called the police to report what had happened. Later, I discovered that Lily's account had been hacked. The real Lily was oblivious to the messages being sent in her name. Whoever had orchestrated the encounter had been targeting unsuspecting people like me. To this day, I avoid meeting strangers online. And every time I think back to that night, I can still see that hand beckoning from the shadows. Story 3, Nightshade.
I've always felt safe in my little corner of Ashford, a quiet suburban town where everyone knows everyone else, and the nights are peaceful and calm. My friend Sophie and I had been living in our small house for about a year now, and it had already become a comfortable, familiar place for both of us. The walls were lined with photos, trinkets, and plants that Sophie loved to care for. The furniture was cozy and secondhand, but it felt like home, and that's all that mattered. We were having a quiet Friday night in. Sophie was on the couch, scrolling through her phone, and I was in the kitchen, sipping a cup of tea, thinking about the week. I'd spent the whole day catching up on emails and work, so I was looking forward to some downtime. Sophia mentioned earlier that she wanted to stay in, to just an easy evening with no plans, which was exactly what we both needed. I pulled up my Instagram feed. I've been getting into posting more frequently, sharing pictures of our weekend trips and little snippets of my life. I kept my account public, hoping it would give me a bigger audience, especially since I had a small but growing following of people who seemed to enjoy the same kinds of things I did: photography, nature, and random moments that made life feel a less ordinary. I noticed a new notification alike from a random account. Nightshade 88, no profile picture, no post, just a name that seemed out of place. The more I looked at it, the more it made me uneasy. I shrugged it off though. It wasn't unusual to get likes from accounts I didn't know, but something about that name lingered in the back of my mind. I went back to scrolling, but then I saw a comment under a picture of Sophie and me at a coffee shop. "Beautiful smile," it said. I felt a little shiver run down my spine. It was a generic comment, yes, but something about the tone of it just felt off. The comment was brief, but it was like I could feel someone watching me from behind the screen. I quickly closed Instagram and set my phone down, trying to dismiss the feeling. Sophie hadn't seemed to notice anything odd when I showed her the comment. "People leave weird comments all the time, Leah. Don't let it get to you," she said, clearly uninterested. I agreed, but deep down, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I'd just been followed by someone who didn't have good intentions. The next day, the comments kept coming. "Nice outfit, pretty eyes, and you seem like someone who's always happy." Each one was more familiar than the last, and each comment made me feel more and more uncomfortable. I blocked the account, but the unsettling feeling remained. I didn't want to be paranoid, but it was like the person behind the screen was getting closer, watching me more carefully. That night, I went out to meet some friends at a bar in the city. Sophie stayed home, wanting a quiet evening with a book and some tea. When I got back around midnight, I noticed a car parked across the street. It was a dark sedan, the kind that blended in easily in the dim light of the neighborhood. The odd thing was, it had tinted windows, and the headlights were off. I tried to tell myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe someone parked there because they didn't want to drive all the way to the other side of the block. Still, it set me on edge. I locked the car doors as I walked up to the house. The porch light flickered, and the front door was slightly ajar, which was strange. Sophie was always careful about making sure the door was shut and locked. I stepped inside, calling her name softly. "Sophie?" No answer. The house felt unusually cold. The kind of cold that you only notice when something feels wrong. I walked up the stairs, a pit growing in my stomach. When I reached Sophie's room, the door was cracked open. The glow of her bedside lamp spilled into the hallway, casting long, eerie shadows along the floor. I knocked lightly, then opened it. "Sophie?" I froze when I saw her. Sophie was crouched in the corner, her face pale, her eyes wide, her body trembling. "Leah, get in here!" "Now," she whispered urgently. I rushed inside, shutting the door behind me. Sophie's hand shot out to pull me closer, her grip tight as she pulled me to the far corner of the room. Her voice was barely audible, but it was filled with panic. "There's someone in the house." I heard footsteps. "Footsteps?" I repeated, confused. "What do you mean? Is someone—" She cut me off, pressing her finger to her lips, signaling me to stay quiet. I was about to say something when I heard it, the faintest sound of slow footsteps, like someone was walking through the hall outside, trying to make as little noise as possible. My heart pounded. I looked at Sophie, my mouth dry. "We need to hide," I whispered. Without a word, we slid to the far side of the room and knelt by the closet door. The steps grew louder, closer. Whoever was out there was moving toward the bedroom. My breath hitched as the doorknob turned slowly. The door creaked open just enough for me to see a shadow in the hallway. A figure, tall and cloaked in dark clothes, his face hidden under the hood of his jacket. He didn't speak. He didn't make a sound other than his breathing, which was heavy, deliberate, like he was trying to steady himself. My body froze. Sophie grabbed my hand tighter. We were trapped. The figure stood in the doorway for a moment, and I thought for sure he would see us. I held my breath, trying not to make a single sound. He must have been able to hear our heartbeats. He stepped forward, his shadow creeping across the floor. And then he stopped. For what felt like an eternity, we remained perfectly still, not daring to move. The man was just outside the closet, standing there in the silence. I could hear him breathing, his chest rising and falling slowly, methodically. Then, without warning, he turned and walked away, the sound of his footsteps fading down the hall. I listened, straining my ears to hear if he was coming back. When it seemed safe, I grabbed Sophie's hand, pulling her to her feet. "We need to get out of here," I said urgently. We ran for the stairs, but when we got to the front door, it felt like the air in the house had thickened, holding us back. I reached for the door handle, but my hands were shaking so badly that I almost couldn't turn it. Finally, the door opened. I shoved Sophie outside and locked the door behind us. My breath came out in ragged gasps as I pushed her toward the car. We didn't look back as I drove down the street, the headlights of our car illuminating the driveway behind us. I glanced at the rearview mirror. The figure was standing at the end of the driveway, just watching us. I floored the gas pedal, not stopping until we reached the police station. By the time the officers arrived at our house, the back window had been forced open. Inside, they found a bag tucked into a corner. Inside were zip ties, duct tape, a hunting knife, and other tools I didn't even want to think about. We never went back to that house. Sophie moved back to her parents' place, and I went to stay with my brother. The police said the guy was likely a stalker who had been watching me for weeks. He'd been monitoring my Instagram, picking out pictures of our home, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I deactivated my Instagram that night, but it hasn't been the same. Every time I hear a car pull up outside or see someone watching me from across the street, I wonder if it's him. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, thinking I hear footsteps on the stairs. I just want to forget. But every time I close my eyes, I see his face in the darkness of my memory. And I know it's not over. Not really.